Doc.
Yeah, okay. The Palestinian-Israeli conflict is in essence a conflict over territory, although religion plays a role in defining the identities of the parties to the conflict, and for some Jews in justifying their claims to the land, the conflict is not fundamentally a religious conflict. Well, Israel will be represented by both Femkes and Thijs, and Palestine will be represented by Denise, Dagmar, and Valerie. Okay, now to start off the debate, who do you think deserves the land based on the war that has been taking place in recent years?
Well, I'd like to start off by saying that Israel prefers peace over war, and they only fight when forced to by others. If it was up to them, there wouldn't have needed to be war.
I find it very hard to believe. During the war, the Israeli Defense Force struck over 1,500 locations in the Gaza Strip, including rocket launch pads, weapon depots, Hamas facilities and apartment blocks. Much more Palestinians have been killed than Israelis.
Israel, what do you have to say about this?
Well, we're not the only one who has been violent. It was only as self-defense. 70% of Israeli children have been killed in Palestinian suicide bombings, shootings and attacks on cars and buses, rapes and kidnappings.
Well, it's war, so of course people in both countries are going to get killed. But the facts are clear. In total, 7,978 Palestinians have been killed, of which 1,620 were under the age of 18. And only 1,503 Israelis have died, so this proves that Israel is far more aggressive than the Palestinians.
Well, anyway, the Palestinians did start war in the first place. In 1947, the UN divided Israel into two equal parts. The Israelis acted flexibly and understanding, but the Palestinians declined the offer and started a war because they selfishly wanted the land for their own.
While the UN did not have the right to divide the country up anyways. They didn't own or occupy the land. I think they caused the war.
Well, still, the Palestinians started it. The Israelis never have started a war or attacked the Arabs in Palestine. It was always the Arabs who attacked Israel.
That's not true. Other than the 1973 war, Israel started all the other wars. Israel started in 1967 when they attacked Egypt, Syria, and Jordan and occupied the remaining parts of Palestine, Egypt, and Syria.
That's just one example, and you're saying that you do admit that the Palestinians started the war in 1973.
Well, yes, Palestine did start the war, but in this war, Israel wasn't attacked. Israel was ordered by the UN Security Council to withdraw from Egypt and Syria, but they never did. So the attack was on the Egyptian and Syrian lands that Israel still occupied instead of Israel itself.
And there are more examples of when Israel started the war, such as the wars in 1956, 1982, 2006 and 2008. And this doesn't even include countless number of attacks Israel launched on other countries, such as Jordan, Lebanon, Iraq and Sudan.
Well, what you said before isn't true. The 1973 war wasn't the only war the Palestinians started. Arab armies attacked Israel in 1948. Israel ended up winning, but they only fought back to defend their own land.
That isn't true either. The attack was a myth that was spread by Israeli propaganda. Attack implies act of aggression. The one who attacked were the Zionists, who started attacking Arab towns and villages nearly 5 months before the Arab armies arrived.
And by the time the war was over, Israel occupied more than 50% of the land that was given to the Arab state by the UN. So this really proves that in most cases, Israel was the aggressor and the Arabs were just defending their lands from the Israelis.
It sounds like the Palestinians know what they're talking about. Israel, do you have anything else to offer on this subject?
Well, we're far more deserving of the land anyways. Like I said, the Israelis took over a lot of the land. This means that they own it by right of conquest. They beat the Palestinians, so the land belongs to them. Is that not how war works?
That's ridiculous. Do you realize what you're saying? If that were true, then one could effectively claim that the majority of Western Europe belongs to Germany because they conquered it in World War II. Let's face it, might does not make right, so the land should go to the Palestinians.
Okay, let's talk about another very important topic, religion. Any thoughts about this, please?
Well, the Israelis still have right to more land, even if not by right of conquest. Israel is the biblical promised land. Jerusalem has been central to Judaism since the biblical times when it was made the eternal spiritual capital to Jewish people.
Exactly, Israel must remain the West Bank and continue to establish settlements there. God promised the land of Israel to Abraham around 3,500 years ago.
But the Palestinians are also practicing Muslims and Christians, who also have biblical claims to sites such as the Dome of the Rock and the Church of Nativity. So if land were to be awarded on a religious basis, Palestine would win easily.
Yeah, you say that Jews have a religious claim to the land, but ironically only a slim percentage of professing Jews claim to be religious. The majority of that percentage is made up of converts, and the majority of those don't even live in Palestine.
So the Israelis can't really claim the land based on religion. Israel, are there any additional reasons why the land belongs to the Israelis, such as some things from history?
The Jews were just returning to their home, which, if not religiously, belonged to them historically. They've been driven out of Western Europe in the Holocaust, and they needed a place to live. Jews deserve a Jewish state because of these historical injustices, and because they are internationally supported and recognized by the United Nations.
Come on, get your facts straight. The land did not historically belong to them. Jews have ruled major sections of Palestine for less than 10% of the time in the last 5,300 years. Before they ever existed, Arab tribes already occupied Palestine. Until about 1100 BC, there were no Jews in Palestine. From 3300 BC till today, Arabs have always lived in Palestine, so historically speaking, Jews have no strong claim on Palestine.
Also, if everyone claimed the land that had once belonged to their ancestor, the whole world would be in chaos. In addition to that, most of the current Israelis are just immigrants from Europe anyways. It's not like they've lived their whole lives on the land.
How about legal issues? Israel did pay for the land, did they not?
Well, the Israelis did offer the Palestinians to stay in Palestine, and they did not need consent. The British created the land for them. The Jewish immigrants bought the land fair and square from Palestine. It was completely legal. Then the Palestinians invaded them for no reason.
Well, first of all, that's not something of theirs to offer. They're basically offering the Palestinians their own land.
And secondly, Israel forcibly destroyed and depopulated more than 400 Palestinian villages in 1948, causing more than 750,000 Palestinians to become refugees. Despite many UN resolutions to allow these people to return to their homes, Israel never complied. So no, Israel did not offer the Palestinians to stay in their homes, and no, Palestine did not invade for no reason.
Also, Israel only bought 7% of the land, so how come they're currently occupying far more larger percentage?
Alright, so maybe the Israelis weren't that nice to the Palestinians. But nevertheless, they should be thankful.
Thankful? What are you talking about? Why should we be thankful? Have you not heard any of the things we just said?
Would you care to explain that argument, please?
Well, we're talking about the technological and agricultural aspects. Before the Israelis came, Palestine was rugged, unused, and undeveloped. Ever since Israelis came, they've been working on the development of Palestine, and they've improved the country in many different ways. They've fixed Palestine. So, therefore, they are far more deserving of the land than those lazy Palestinians.
Would you mind your language, please? Palestine, your opinion on this, please.
I don't agree at all. This is an incredibly flawed argument. The Ottoman Turks, the Turkish-speaking population of the Ottoman Empire, took control of Palestine in 1516 and continued to rule until World War I. They forced a feudal system, which is a system for organizing society around relationships resulting from the holding of land in exchange for service or labor. So they forced that on the Arabs, preventing them from ever having access to modern tools or having the ability to work on large pieces of land.
Exactly. The British were more concerned with controlling Palestine than developing it, and because of this, Palestine just couldn't develop the land, otherwise they obviously would have.
Alright, the final but nevertheless extremely important topic concerning this conflict is the government of Palestine. Any thoughts?
Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's the only country that isn't ruled far too strictly and that actually takes the citizens' wishes into account. We believe that it's a far better way of ruling a country than the Palestinians will.
Well, there's a reason why Palestinians are trying to not be taken over by Israel. They like their country and their government just the way it is. The definition of a democracy is a government decided upon the majority of the people. Since the majority of people living in Palestine are Palestinian, it would seem that there would be a Palestinian government in Palestine anyways, not an Israeli one. By the very definition, Israel isn't even a democracy, since the majority of the people doesn't even have a say.
Well, Israel has welcomed Palestinians to become Israelis, They try to satisfy as many people as possible, as a democracy.
Well, Israel is aware that due to the Palestinians' perception of honor, Palestinians will generally refuse to become Israelis. Israel's encouragement is purely for the sake of appearing democratic. If the Palestinians actually did all become Israelis, they could literally vote the government away from the Jewish Israeli minority.
Also, Israel, despite its constant denials, orders actions and legislates laws that are highly undemocratic. Israel uses an agency called the Shin Bet as strikebreakers, torturers, and intimidators. It is also against Israeli law to own, use, or wear a Palestinian flag or any reproduction of it.
So, let us get this straight. We discussed several important topics: the war, religion, the history, some legal issues, and the Palestinian government. Every argument that has been used by Israel was encountered by a far more logical and better argument from Palestine. I think that we could say that without a doubt Palestine convinced that they have more right on the promised land and that nobody should interfere with their problems because no good will come from it. All in favor for Palestine, please vote.